Hey guys, and welcome back to Ultra Game World. And today we are looking at a £1,000 PC parts build. Now, if you haven't checked out this series already, I would highly recommend you go back and watch the other videos. We had the £500 build and we had the £750 build. Today is the turn for the £1,000 build. Now, we do have a little bit more budget than previously, so we are looking to obviously upgrade our graphics card mainly. That's going to be the big priority with this build. But overall we are sort of sticking with the £750 build and then just adding on a far better graphics card. Now this price point, I probably would say right here, right now in June 2021, probably going down the pre-build is probably going to be the best option. Now I had a little look just before the start of this video, and you could actually buy a pre-built PC with a Ryzen 5600X and a RTX 3060 with 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that was about £1,000. So that is actually going to be our current build, our build at your own sort of build. Now, some people might say, okay, well, I'll just go and buy that. But, of course, we're buying exactly the components we want here, rather than having to buy from a pre-built, which will obviously use their parts which they want to use. Some pre-built PCs, you might not even see the exact parts which you're actually going to use, and some might list them out. But, again, sometimes in the build process, they might not use the exact ones, or sometimes to get the upgrades you might have to pay a lot more for the upgrades than it's actually worth. So you might not want to go down the pre-built route, and it's not for everyone. And some people love the pre-builds and will only buy pre-builds and will literally sell one PC, buy the next PC, then sell that PC and buy the next one, when they kind of upgrade over the like 2-3 years, or sometimes even 4 years, and they won't even fiddle around with the PC or touch the PC at all in any way, and that's just how they want to game, and that's perfectly fine. And it's different for everyone. Sometimes I think most of the people who watch this channel or are watching me currently are probably into PC building, or you have some kind of interest in that, or you might not have, but you might just want to watch these for entertainment. So yeah, without further ado, let's crack on with the actual build that we are going to do for £1,000. So £1,000 is a little bit on the budget side, but isn't too bad in terms of a gaming PC, I would say. I mean, that's certainly mid-range, and certainly if you were doing this in 2020, you would have actually quite a big budget there, and you actually have quite a lot of money to spend, and you get really, really good performance actually for £1,000. You'd be able to buy a very good PC. You'd probably be able to get something like a 5600 XT with the 3600 processor, the Ryzen processor. At least, again, maybe more. You might be able to have got more than that. In that time, you might have been able to get the 3700X or the 3800X. But anyway, let's crack on with this actual build. Now, if you haven't watched the £750 PC build, I would go back and watch that, because the components are basically the same with an upgraded graphics card. But if you don't want to go back into that video, no worries, let's just crack on with this build. So the CPU obviously that we're going to use is the Ryzen 5 3600. It's a 6-core 12-thread processor that we used previously, and that's about £180 on Amazon currently. Now obviously all these prices can fluctuate. It's not set in stone, this is just a guide. You could obviously get the 1600 AF if you want to save a bit more money here, and then maybe even up the money on your case or PSU or anything else, or spend the money elsewhere. But I would certainly prioritise the CPU and the GPU as spending the most money on. And the motherboard is the B550M Gigabyte DS3H mATX. I'll put it at the bottom again. It's about £75 board. This is a perfectly fine B550 board. I do think B550 board is where you want to be. It's got the AM4 socket, so obviously upgradability all the way up to the 5950X. And B550 is just a great platform. There's no need for X570. It's just basically a redundant platform, the X570 in my opinion. B550 is all you need, and let's move on. RAM is our 16 gigabytes of Crucial Ballistix again, 3200 megahertz, pretty standard. That's about £76. Nothing really too much to say about RAM. Basically with RAM, just buy 16 gigabytes at 3200 megahertz speed. That's pretty much all you need to do with RAM. If you can get the 3600 megahertz speed, by all means do buy that, but don't pay a massive premium for that. I would say anything more than about £20 extra on top of what you're buying the 3200 megahertz kit for. I probably wouldn't touch that. I'd probably just buy the 3200 megahertz kit in that sense. But yeah, I mean 16 gigabytes is still perfectly fine in this day and age for me. I don't think, unless you're doing video production, you won't need 32 gigabytes. So yeah, let's move on. The big change from the £750 build is obviously the graphics card. We have gone with the RTX 2060 here. The 3060, if available, obviously would be far better. Now I have seen the 3060 sometimes around the sort of £550 to £600 mark on CCL, but it's like literally out of stock within about 5 minutes, so you're going to have to be very quick if you want to get that. But CCL currently, for a few days now, I've seen this, the 2060 for £500. Now again, a 2060 at £500 is way over what you should be paying. Probably about £300 is really as much as you should be paying in a normal market, but unfortunately we're not in a normal market. We're in this GPU shortage, this crazy time, so yeah, £500 is what you're going to have to pay, unfortunately, if you do want this graphics card new. Now again, look at the used market, try and get the best deal you possibly can. The used GPU at £500 is a lot of money, and buying used, I do admit that probably at that sort of price you're going to certainly want to buy new instead of used. But there are some deals that you can be done. Certainly if you're going to buy locally, you get yourself a very good graphics card at the £500 mark. You might even get yourself a 3070 if you're very lucky. But again, you've got to take your chances and be quick whenever a deal does come up. There is some alternatives if you didn't want to spend quite as much money as £500 on a graphics card. I would certainly say the 1660 Super would be a good one to get if you can get that around the £350 to maybe £400 mark. Obviously the 1660 Super would only be about £250 card normally, but again, we are where we are. So the rest of the parts are exactly the same as the £750 PC. The storage is the WD Blue 1TB NVMe drive at £84. The PSU is the Aerocool Cylon 500 watt 80 plus unit at 27, and the case is the Techwear NEXUS M BLACK mATX case, and that's at £35. So the build is pretty much the same as the previous build which I was talking about. I personally think it is a good build. It comes in at £975.15p. So you've got a little bit of wiggle room. Maybe you want to upgrade your CPU cooler from the stock CPU cooler, because in all these videos I'm assuming you're going to use the stock cooler, except for the videos, which the next two videos which are going to come up, which are going to be a more the higher end, which you're going to have to use a aftermarket CPU cooler, because it won't come with the it won't come in the box. But I would recommend using the, well, maybe not recommend, but I would say that you can perfectly use the stock cooler if you're on a very tight budget. But obviously, say like a month or two down the line, I would probably take off that stock cooler and upgrade it to an aftermarket cooler, something like the Arctic Freezer A30 Next, perfectly fine, or obviously the classic Hyper 212. That would be perfectly fine as well for a CPU cooler. I think overall it's quite a balanced PC. Obviously we're spending so much of our money onto the graphics card, but it just is where it is at the moment. You are getting the AM4 socket, you are getting the B550 chipsets, so you have got future upgradability there. Overall, I do think it is a good build for £1,000. Now, again, as I said, the pre-built is probably going to be the route you want to go down, really, because you are, at this moment, you're going to get better value. Just the way it is, you're just going to get better value. Pre-built, which I talked about earlier, is just going to totally wipe the floor with this build, unfortunately. But like I said, not everyone does want to go down the pre-built route, and not everyone has that availability to actually get a pre-built to them either. Depending on where you are, maybe within the world and what have you, there might not be many manufacturers or sort of system builders who actually do that and offer that service. You might not be able to have that. You might actually have to buy the parts yourself. So again, it's all down to where you are and what availability you have. Do your own research really here as much as possible. I'd always recommend doing that for yourself. You can take this guide obviously, and I would certainly recommend the parts which I have. I think all the parts are perfectly fine. You're still going to get yourself a very good build. 1080p is going to be perfectly fine. Even like high settings for most games going to be perfectly fine with a 2060. Obviously ray tracing you're not going to touch. It's pointless having it. I wouldn't bother with ray tracing, certainly at this price point. It's just not going to be worthwhile. 1440p gaming, maybe at low, yes, but with the 2060 I probably wouldn't touch 1440p. I probably would just keep it at 1080p personally, and just put it to high to medium settings and be perfectly happy. It's going to give you over 60 FPS on more or less any modern game, so yeah, I think it's a good build overall. And again, let me know in the comments below, what would you change? Would you go pre-built? What might you do instead? Would you go down Intel route instead of AMD maybe? That is an option as well. Certainly like the 10 or the 1140, sorry, the 11400 now, Intel is actually an option. Certainly at this price point. Whether you can get a good enough motherboard, I don't know. Whether you might have to overpay a little bit for a decent motherboard, I don't know. That would be an option as well, and there are many things you can do. You've got a lot more money, £1,000 to kind of be a bit more creative, and if you want to go down the used market route, you could get a lot more value there as well. So there's a lot of options you can do. So if you like this video, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.